And to talk more about the situation in Ukraine and what lies ahead for the country, I'm joined by Ambassador Kurt Volker. He is Washington's former ambassador to NATO and a regular guest on our show. Thank you so much for joining us. First of all, what do you make of the Prime Minister's resignation? What does it show as far as Ukraine's stability, and what does the future hold?
Well, actually, I think this could end up being a positive move because, as your correspondent said, the parties that stepped out of the coalition feel they will do much better under a new election. This may end up being a more reformist government that comes in after this, and one that may give President Poroshenko more legislative support for the reforms that he needs to introduce to fight corruption and to revive the economy. So it may end up being positive, but we've got to get through a period of some uncertainty right now.
Do you think this resignation will have any effect at all on some of the other issues, some of the other events taking place, this investigation of MH17, which is just in the east of the country, and in addition to the unrest that is still taking place?
Well, the risk here is that the parliament becomes less able to make decisions about budgets and about acquisition, for instance, of some military equipment, things that are going to be necessary for the Ukrainian military right away. It may be harder to make those decisions in a transition period. But the thing about the investigation is that this is all happening within a territory controlled by these Russian-supported rebels. And the access problems that were described in the reports here are really coming from that side. There, I don't think the government change in Kiev is going to make much of a difference. It's really going to be the role that Russia plays in urging these rebels to cooperate, and the role the international community plays in putting pressure on Russia to urge them to make those gestures toward the rebels.
How do you think the international community is viewing this? Do you think, again, these resignations will affect Ukraine's standing in the international community?
Well, unfortunately, I've seen it up close. There's always a bias in favor of stability. So whatever we have now, just keep it. And so I suspect that the international community is going to be a bit worried. Who are we going to deal with in Ukraine? What kind of authority will they have? What can go wrong with an election process? But frankly, as we said before, I think actually this may end up being positive in the end. And we just got to let the Ukrainians work through it. That's what a democracy is about.
Reyes mentioned in the story, we just heard that Ukraine is still facing this huge financial crisis. It needs funds from the IMF, and the second round depends on what is being decided in Parliament. Are you optimistic that Ukraine can turn things around to get back on solid financial footing?
Well, they can, but let's not pretend it's easy. And they have some immediate things. First thing is a security challenge. They have an active insurgency inside the country, supported directly by Russia, maybe even, as we heard in one of these reports, with indirect fire coming from Russian territory. So they got to get a handle on the security challenge first, and that's got to take priority. The second thing is to establish a strong political basis for governance in Kiev. That's what these elections that will now come up will do. And then they've got to take a very dire financial situation that they inherited from the previous government and try to start turning that around, get the economy moving, get tax revenues back in the coffers, and then squeeze out some of the unsustainable spending practices that they have started off with. And they're going to need EU, US, IMF support to do that.
One last question, and we've been talking about this whole conflict and situation for months now. Now that we have this crash investigation, now that we have possibly more sanctions on Russia, how do you see things turning, if at all?
Well, we don't have enough sanctions on Russia right now. The European Union has not followed the U.S. lead. The U.S. put sectoral sanctions in there against some very big energy companies and banks. And this is something that if the European Union did the same thing, it would get Russia's attention. And I think we then start seeing Russia want to negotiate a way downward. But right now, Russia doesn't feel that pressure. They don't think Europe is serious. They think they can continue doing what they're already doing, destabilizing Ukraine, supporting this insurgency. As you know, they already annexed Crimea. I think they're interested to see how far they can take it in eastern Ukraine.
All right. Kurt Volker, we appreciate your time as always. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.